So let's start by just having a general statement that if you are not negotiating your pay increases from job to job, or you're not negotiating your benefits and you're just accepting the offer as is, you are leaving money on the table, right? And something like 70% of recruiters expect a counteroffer. That's because they, and because of that mentality, they're probably going to undercut you a little bit. Now, whenever you're negotiating, sometimes there isn't room for growth in the salary. It's just the truth of the matter. They are at their cap, and unless you're a stellar candidate, they're not gonna. Their boss isn't gonna let them go above that. That happens. There's nothing you can do about that in that sense. But what you can do is negotiate 20 other things that might make it worth your time, might make it worth your energy. Say, all right, well, I'm losing out on $5,000 that I want. So where can I go find $5,000 worth of value? Now, in order to negotiate, be a good negotiator, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind when it comes to this. And this could be you negotiating for a new role, as well as you for a different company, or you negotiating in your own role for a promotion or a title change, or perhaps a counteroffer, whatever it may be, right? But you have to understand a few things. One, you obviously have to be respectful, not give ultimatums. That's bare bones. Two, you have to put yourself in a position of power. If you are desperate and you come across desperate, how are you going to negotiate, right? No one wants the thirsty guy, in every aspect, whether it's an employee or dating. And you have to come off be in a position of power. So how do you do a position of power, right? Well, you have other offers, you have other opportunities, and you're not worried about it when you have a backup plan, right? So have a backup plan. Be prepared in that aspect. So let's talk about 20 things that you can negotiate, because I think this is important. And a lot of times people don't even realize that you can negotiate things other than salary. I want to thank our sponsor for the video, Dev Mountain Coding Bootcamp. If you guys are interested in learning iOS, QA, full stack web, UI, UX, Salesforce, they have a bunch of after hours, full-time, online courses. You can check them out at devmountain.com. On a side note, look forward to a couple weeks from now. I'll be on the Dev Mountain podcast talking about some stuff. I guess that's what you do on podcasts, right? So check them out, devmountain.com. So this first one is something I actually negotiated at a role, and it got me an extra week of PTO. So it's PTO, right? Paid time off. This is one of the ones I would say is probably a go-to for a lot of people, because it is an easier thing to swing than a lot of other items, right? So one thing that in the PTO realm is you can say, hey, most companies will have an accrual, like you accrue a certain amount a month. So what you can do is, instead of getting maybe 10 days, ask for 15. And they might do that. You can also ask for an immediate amount of PTO. Say, okay, well, you can't go up on the PTO because we're in a tier or some nonsense they're going to tell you, right? Well, start me off with 5 days of PTO. I'll still accrue at the same rate, but start me off at 5 days of PTO. Number 2 is flex time. This is stuff that's important to a lot of people, right? And I've worked in organizations where, what's flex time? If for those of you who might not have heard the term before, it's essentially giving you the ability to work your own hours. You say, look, I want to work from 10 p.m. to 8 or 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And, you'll probably have to adjust your schedule some days, but generally that works out. I have several coworkers who work 4 10-hour days, and so they have three days off a week. And I think that's fantastic. That's a great option as well. The ability to work remote, number 3. This is crucial, and this isn't, depending on the job, this may or may not be relevant to you, but I would say today, for most salaried roles in the world that you're using a computer, the ability to work remote, and that may not be, you may not be full remote, right? They may not be comfortable with you being fully remote, but they might say, 2 days a week is fine, 1 day a week is fine. Or even just the ability to be flexible, to say like, hey, this is something that's important to me. You might be able to get there, and I encourage you to ask for that in your negotiation. Tuition reimbursement. This is number 4, and God knows we we need it. So this is kind of a good one to ask for, even if you're not thinking about going back, right? I'm not saying ask for things you don't want, but so school is expensive, right? College is expensive. This is a great way for you to not only show that you're interested in learning and moving forward, but to save on that, right? Because it does show that you're interested, you're trying to mature, you're trying in terms of an employee, a developer, whatever it is, you're trying to get better. This is something that will actually make you stand out a little bit as well, because they're interested in candidates who are going to be a better candidate during your tenure at their company. So that's number 4. Number 5, repayment of student loans. This is a relatively new one, but something that's been happening at larger companies quite frequently lately. As more and more people graduate college with, I think it's 40 grand of debt on average, and that's the average. So people are higher, people are lower. A lot of companies are starting to implement the repayment of student loans, where it's usually at the end of a year they'll repay a certain, let's say it's $10,000 of your student loans for each year that you work at that company. That is something that has a lot of value, where, okay, cool, we can work down this loans. We're not going to pay you an additional salary, but you said you have student loans. We're going to help you out with that, because that's where that money's going to go to anyhow. And they probably get some sort of tax write-off as well. But that's another great thing that you can negotiate. So number 6, conferences and trainings, like conference type trainings. I guess is what I mean. Especially in software development, any industry has conferences, and quite often they're very expensive. The tickets can be up to $1,000, sometimes more, for some of the more popular, Angular conferences. And one of the things that, say you want to go between the $1,000 ticket, the hotel for 3 days, the flight, you might be looking at $2,000, $3,000 just to go to a 2 or 3 day event. Now, you can negotiate with your work to cover that. And again, this is another thing that will show them that look, man, I'm trying to be a better employee. I'm trying to be you need to understand that you're buying me not today, but tomorrow, because I'm going to get better. And so this is another great one to ask for. And it's just great for your career, because you're going to be progressing. And so I highly encourage to bring that up in negotiation. And this may be one of those items where they say, look, we're not going to put that into your contract, but when the time comes, come to me and I will be open to it. And we'll see what we can do. This might be one of those items where, let's say, we love that, we'll do it. We're not going to put it in your contract because of whatever reason. And that I'm always worried about that, and I hate that. You have to take your gut instinct about whether people will say that. But this is one of those things where conferences and trainings, I would say, okay, I'll slide on having it in my contract on this specific one. I forget what number we're on, but next one, I think 7, promotion of job title. Job titles aren't something that are super important in the world, but they do have some value. And if you're already doing a job in which you are a certain title that is higher than what you're doing, ask for that title. Maybe they won't. They're like, well, we're gonna make you, team lead, right? You're interviewing for a team lead, and you say, well, isn't this role really a development manager role, which would most likely be considered higher tier? And based off what I have, can we change the title here? Because that's what I think this role is, and I think that is what would make me happy. And you can go from saying, hey, I don't want the junior on my title, for instance. That's something that is a small change to them. It's not going to cost them any money most of the time, but it's something that could have various impacts on your career. So keep that in mind. Title changes are super important. One-time bonuses, right? Sign-on bonuses. These are something that, it's going to be a harder sell. If they're at the salary cap, they're probably at the cap where they don't really want to give you any more money. But one-time bonuses are... At sign-on bonuses are something that, arrive day one, here's a check for $5,000. We appreciate your time here. Typically, these comes with some sort of requirements where I've had an offer for one. I took a different offer, but the offer went something like this, where, a $5,000 bonus, sign-on bonus, but we expect you to be here 2 years. So if you leave at 1 year, we're taking $2,500 out of your check. So you might get something like that along the way with your sign-on bonus. So keep that in mind. The other type, the next one, I think 9 now, the guaranteed 1 year bonus, right? This is a one-time bonus where after 1 year or after a set amount of time, you will get a bonus for your time. So you say, okay, well, I understand you don't have the money today, right? The budget's whatever, but how about a year from now? Get me that one-time bonus a year from now, and we'll go from there. I think that's a very reasonable thing to ask, and something you can negotiate as well. So I think we're on 10 or 11. Maternity and parental leave. Some of you who are international might be stunned to find out that America doesn't have maternity or parental leave by default in our workplaces. We haven't matured to that point to say it's worth something. So if you have a kid or you're thinking about having children, this might in the next year or two, this might be something to argue where you get it into your contract. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a harder thing depending on the organization, depending on the role. If you're starting some intern position, you're probably not going to get too much. But if you're going into a management position or a senior dev position, and these are things that are important to you and they want to keep you, it's completely reasonable. So that might be another item that you can negotiate. This next one, severance. Severance is something that is a interesting one, and I've suggested this in the past and got turned down for it in my negotiations. But severance is essentially the ability of that if I get laid off for something that's not like me being a bad employee, but the company closed a department, they didn't keep me, and blah blah blah, then I get paid out some money. So usually it's somewhere between 1 to 4 weeks for up to a cap after a year. So if you're at a company, let's say it's 2 weeks and you've been at a company 6 years, you'll have 3 months, and let's say that's the cap of back pay. So they let you off. You have 3 months of severance coming your way. I like this personally. I would love severance because I like the idea of having a nest egg that I don't really have to worry about. You do stuff. If the company goes out of business, you're probably not going to get it because creditors are going to get the money and whatnot. But this is one of those items that depending on how comfortable the company is with it, in theory, it doesn't cost them money unless they have to let you go, right? So in theory, this is something that's not going to cost them too much money. So the next one is a company car. It's a lot of roles. You're doing a lot of driving. You're putting miles on your car, and you're breaking it down, and you probably get some sort of reimbursement, but it's always much better when the company can provide you with that car. That's something that you can negotiate in your role. And there may be contingencies on it and whatnot, but that's an item that you can negotiate, and it could save you potentially hundreds of dollars, or even even if you're breaking even on the wear and tear in your car, it saves you the hassle and the stress of like, okay, well, I just put 40,000 miles on my car. Now I gotta go look for a new car because I didn't save the money that they gave me and all this sort of stuff. So company car is something great as well. Next is team placement, right? So you might interview with a department and they might have an idea for you in a team, and you may want to be on a different team. This is something that's completely reasonable to say, you know what, man, I know I interviewed for this, but you told me about this other project that you're working on. It sounds so interesting. Is there any way that I could transition to that team? Is that something that we can happen? Because I want to be on that project. I want to work with these people. These are the people I enjoyed working with. Team placement is something that you can definitely negotiate in your contract. At least may say no. And that's something they may do for all these, right? They may say no, but for the most part, they're going to try and negotiate with you on the things that they can make happen. And, you just have to put it in a respectful manner. Like, well, let's talk to the team and see if anybody's willing to transfer to the other team we're going to put you in, right? Because we're happy. We just need a team member, right? We need someone, and if they say you're qualified for this and we can get someone to jump over to the other team, great. That works out good for everybody. So up next is new equipment. New equipment is something that might be a little funny, but you'd be surprised how other organizations, aren't working with the latest and the greatest equipment, and how that can affect your work and your life. So new equipment, that could be things like a new laptop. That could be things like a stand-up desk. Depending on what industry you're in, new photo recording, new cameras, new this, new that. This is stuff that will make your life easier and perhaps make you more productive and produce a higher quality of work. So new equipment is a great way of doing it. So the next one is kind of unique to if you're doing a counter argument, I would say, but the ability to pay out PTO, I guess you could negotiate this in your salary as well. So I like this one because I don't really take too many vacations, and sometimes, like when you're buying a house, you might want to negotiate those 80 hours of PTO, 100 hours of PTO that you've saved up to have the ability to cash that out. So what I mean by that is 80 hours is a extra paycheck, right? I'd like to cash that out. I'd like you to pay me as if I got a second check. Now, that might be something they're open to, and you can talk about that, but that's something that I personally like, and I hate just to take days off. But payout of PTO is something you negotiate as well. The next one is the ones that I'm a real big fan of is a early merit increase. So when you're negotiating, they say, okay, well, we can get you at 90, but we can't get you 95. Well, okay. But what if instead of doing a 1-year review, which a lot of companies do, my review's at 6 months? I'll meet you in the middle. We'll do an early review, at this salary range, and that way at 6 months we can go back and we'll hit that 3 to 5%, 3 to 10%, whatever it is, right? Merit increase. That's something that's personally reasonable to ask, and I think is very a nice one to hit on as well. So the next one, which is number 17, had to look at, is PTO for charity/community work. This is something that personally is important to me. I volunteer through code.org when I can, when they call me. And in the past, I've had to use PTO, or I've had to really stress about going real quick and leaving as soon as I can. And it's not a good experience. It's a good experience because you're doing good, but it's not the best experience, I suppose. So a lot of organizations have sort of gives back where, like, look, 1 to 3 days a year, we'll pay you to go be part of the community. You want to go volunteer at a shelter? You want to go, volunteer to talk to, elementary school students about STEM? We want you to. We want you, we are part of this community, and we want you to be part of the community. This is something that you can negotiate as well. I encourage you to. Up next, and this is unique. Not every company will have stock or options, but you can say, look, I want to be able to buy company stock at a discounted rate, and I want to maybe earn stock based off a yearly rate. These are all things that certain companies are happy to do, and sometimes they have it at look, we'll let you in at 1 year. You might be able to negotiate, say, look, I currently have stock options. Can we skip the 1 year mark? Just start me on day one. That's something that you might be able to negotiate. Now, you may not always, because there might be legal things tied to that and business things tied to that, but it is something that you can ask. Cross-training. This is something that very few people take advantage of. Very, very, very few. If a company wants you, they want you to excel at a role, be willing to say, hey, you know what? I can already do this role. Well, what about training me for that, right? What about I'm good in front end. I want to do full stack. Can we get a third of my tickets to be in back end so I can get some cross training or DevOps, whatever it is? Because now you're gaining skills, you're becoming more valuable to the business. That's things that they're interested in. And last but not least, relocation and moving expenses. This may be one of those items where it's sometimes harder to get because we're trying to find creative ways to not spend money, right? And this is like a direct cost, but it is also one of those items where the company, if you can show them there's a direct expense, maybe they'll give you a check. You'll say, look, you show them your moving bill and you show them the relocation costs associated with it. They may reimburse you, and that's a completely reasonable thing to ask from a company. So I encourage you to ask that as well. And I have one more, actually. When you're sitting down and you're going through this list, I want to just make the point that don't negotiate for things that aren't important to you. No one likes that person who's looking like they're greedy and they're negotiating just to negotiate, right? If you have an offer you're happy with, it's okay to negotiate for the things that are of value to you. But if you don't want a company car, don't negotiate for a company car just for the sake of it, right? But the last tip, I guess this is number 21, bonus one, is say that you're open to suggestions, and be open to it. Explain that, look, I want to work with you, and we're close on where I can say yes. I want you to make a competitive offer, and I want to say yes. I'm open to suggestions, right? How can we get here? I've suggested a few things. Do you have any other suggestions on what we can do to make this work? And that might open up some things that you hadn't even thought of. I know it has with me in the past where, I never thought about that. Yeah, that would work. I'll meet you there. Great. We're done here, right? So keep that in mind. So here are 20 tips or 20 items that you can negotiate with your salary. And again, just remember to do it from a place of power. Be willing to have an honest conversation. Don't get greedy, but don't worry about understanding your value that you bring to the company. So as always, guys, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. hit that like and notification. I don't know. I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Quick thank to our sponsor, DevicePlus.com. If you guys are interested in Arduino and the Internet of Things, such as Raspberry Pis, might I recommend checking them out at DevicePlus.com. If you click the link in the top corner, it'll take you to a really cool thing. It's an intro beginner level tutorial of how to build a tripwire using Arduino. Check it out.